So good morning to everyone who has logged on. Thank you for joining us. My name's James. I am the General Manager of the EMA, and today we are discussing managing your time and communicating with colleagues whilst in lockdown. We are now running, as standard, 3 webinars a week. One is for senior EMA members. One is a wellbeing webinar. One is one every Thursday with useful, relevant content. That's as standard, and we're working with our partners to bring you more educational content as well. So keep an eye out for either webinars, videos, or articles, blogs that go on our website. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to hand over to Richard, who is moderating this morning's session, and you can take it from there. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. There is the option to leave comments for the panel using the message, the chat function, and there is also the Q&A function to ask any questions. You can ask them anonymously, and Richard will pick them up at some point excuse me, during the discussion, and any questions we don't answer, we will get the panel to answer them, and I can send them out afterwards. So without any further ado, Richard, over to you.
Thank you, James. I'm going to kick off by saying, Amy, where are you? I want to be there.
I'm still in Zanzibar, Richard.
I love that. That's great. That's great. Didn't know we had that functionality. Remember that. Okay, guys, thank you very, very much indeed for agreeing to take part in the panel. Objective of today's session, and I'll kick it off by saying, Christina, I'm going to come to you first to give us a quick overview. But is really to talk about the new norm that we all currently find ourselves in, both from a business point of view, a personal point of view, and team communication. A number of the sessions that we're running, or turn my phone off, people are commenting on that I'm hearing is the challenge, both personal and business challenge around adapting to this current isolation period and process that we all find ourselves in. And I think it's really important that we share and discuss some of that stuff openly to help people think about what they're doing, how they're doing it, how they're approaching it. So I'm going to throw out some questions to you just generally and ask each of you to talk about your own experiences for sort of 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll sort of get into a discussion. What I'm really interested in knowing is how you have adapted to changing your day, how you're communicating with your team and your colleagues, etc., how your company is communicating to everybody, adjusting to family life, kids around you, or your partners, other sides, flatmates. If you're working in total isolation, that could also be very, very tricky. Managing time and availability back into the business. I've heard quite a lot of that being a problem for people because now they've got school learning and children and stuff like that. So it's harder. You just cannot be available at the drop of a hat for a meeting like you could in the office or something. So yeah, saying that, staying mentally sharp and a bit of physical sharp, keeping well-being. I think that's really interesting. Laura, would love your overviews and more holistic view on all of that across what we're talking about. And 2 weeks in, what have we learned? What could we be doing better? And how can we see this adopting going forward and evolving? So lessons learned and some best practice. So there's a lot out there, but I just want to start that off with asking both Christina and then Amy, very much from their corporate side, to give a view on that, and then Laura, for you to sort of jump in or add some at the end about what I know you're consulting with a number of different businesses and quite a few agencies of how you're helping them adapt to this change. So Christina, over to you.
Thank you.
Right, and introduce yourselves first. I'm not sure if everyone, your Gartner and BVCA, etc. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I work for Gartner, which is a consultancy and advisory firm. So far, we've had to cancel over 100 of events worldwide, so it's been definitely cancelled and postponed. So it's been definitely a difficult time for everyone. But I think what's really kind of kept us going is making sure that we do speak to each other and stay connected in terms of getting used to working from home and with your family around. I think that a few kind of tips to finding your productivity is just around, they're very basic, but Gartner put out very quickly some very basic tips to kind of help us to set up really in that new setting. But just finding a spot for you, whether it's a desk or a part of the house where that is your spot, this is where you're doing your work. This is where you kind of, working with your colleagues and connecting and creating, organizing your day and setting up clear expectations has been definitely one of the kind of most important things for me. Just setting expectations with everyone, really. It's with your family and how you're planning to kind of manage this, having these conversations, figuring it out together and actually making a clear plan as to this is what I'm doing in the morning. I'm going for a run at this time, or I'm spending a couple of hours with my daughter because she needs to be learning and we're doing this and that. But also setting up these clear expectations with your team as well, and just let them know how you're managing your day, learning from them how they're managing their days as well, because it is very individual. It works very differently for everyone. Everyone has different circumstances at home. So it's just very important to have these open and honest conversations. And it's the same with your boss and with your manager, just making sure that you connect with them. It's a two-way street, I think. And what I found works really well for me is we have our one-on-ones every week. They last for an hour. It's often not enough time to discuss everything. But every other day we catch up I have requested that I catch up for 15 minutes with my manager to kind of ask. It's an opportunity for me to ask those two burning questions that I might have. And it's just an opportunity to touch base with them to make sure that they are okay, that, they are, if they need any support, I'm there to offer it. But also just to keep the conversation going, really. And it might be that if you have, 3 kids at home and 2 pets, it might be that sometimes there are things that you miss. It's easy to miss an email. This is a good opportunity to kind of ask, questions and make sure that you are on track. But I've actually got some slides that I can share post this with our members as well. It might be quite interesting. And a lot of these tips are very, very basic, but they're good for kind of reference, really checkpoints. Something I wanted to mention, as I was saying, everyone has, different circumstances and everyone is dealing with this in a different way. What we have in Gartner, and I know that some companies probably don't have this, but it is an employee assistance program where there are consultants available 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can phone them, you can talk about any issues you might have at work or at home, or it might be that you're struggling with your finances and they're there to support. And this has been quite well utilized, to be honest, over the past week, is from what I hear. And for companies who don't have that, I think that there are some good kind of industry initiatives out there that we can share as well. But yes, we are at the moment, we started very strong in terms of we use Teams as a platform where we communicate. And we started very strong with sharing various tips. We have various groups within Teams that focus on parenting, focus on staying active and things like that. This week, I feel that there is a little dip. Whilst we were communicating a lot over the past week, at the moment, I feel like, maybe this is the point where people are like, I think like I figured out this whole working from home thing. Or maybe it's not, maybe it's that people are quiet. Again, it's just really important to be out there, to be supporting everyone. I often share articles that I read, or some funny memes that can just make people kind of laugh, hopefully. So yeah, important to keep that communication going. It's worked very well for my team so far. I joined a newly formed team within our conference production wider team, and we didn't, with some of our team members, we didn't necessarily know each other that well. I feel that, in fact, this situation and the events happening have actually helped us to build that relationship much quicker than we would have otherwise, I feel. Now I know what their favorite ice cream flavors are. I know their whole families. It's quite we know each other on that personal level, which I think is important and helps as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of my experience so far.
Cool, great. That's great. It is funny that what I'm finding talking to different people in different industries is that people are getting to know each other better through this, isolation, which is really weird and surreal. But you're absolutely right that you're getting to see inside people's homes, or see that some people live on a beach. It's really, really strange, and that's a sort of an interesting phenomena around this. So that's cool. And I also think that the thing you just mentioned there about what did I write it down? The employee assistant program, that there are bigger issues than just the day-to-day that people are struggling with and challenged with, and perhaps do need to talk to somebody, and where do they talk to those people and everything else. And just to throw in we started for people that are listening who might not have joined the group yet, James has started an EMA WhatsApp group as well, which people are flicking things around on, or sharing some insights or knowledge of stuff that's happening. So thanks for that, Christina. Amy, you'd like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of background how BBCA are adapting?
So Amy Abbott's Director of Events and Training at BBCA. So similarly, we have also been postponing rather than cancelling at the moment events and training courses, initially to the end of the summer, but of course we don't know how long this is going on for, so we're currently in various scenario planning mode. So this poses a huge challenge for our team, because this is what we live and breathe every day. I guess in terms of starting with how I'm sort of liaising with the team and addressing this. First of all, it's in terms of everybody's well-being. So, the first thing I kind of suggested to my team and strongly advise is that, we still keep a routine. We're used to getting up, setting the alarm, getting up, getting ready and going to work. And I think it's really important that we keep into that healthy routine, rather than, the danger is that you might not get dressed in the morning, the day rolls on, and that's negative habits to get into. So number one, getting up, getting ready. And so to that, and also doing some exercise if you can. So we typically start the day with 9 o'clock calls, whether that's kind of one-on-one or individual teams. So our management team, we meet daily now. It used to be weekly. We meet daily for half an hour to talk about high-level issues, and that's often first thing in the morning. So we find that really helps to kickstart the day. And actually, your standing item for those calls is to try and check in with each of the teams, looking to see are there any issues, and then how's everybody doing. So I think that's really important. And I've suggested to like we've already mentioned, everybody's got a different situation at home. Whether they're living on my own, like myself, is a very different challenges to people living with their family or parents. We've got members of the team who are self-isolating for 3 months, which means not leaving their house for 3 months. So not everybody has outdoor space. That's really challenging. So constantly thinking about everybody's individual situations and their mental health, and keeping them upbeat, but and keeping them engaged. I could talk about the endless challenges that we've been facing, which I think we're slowly overcoming and being aware of. But I think that's the key thing. It's being aware of how everybody's mindset is on a daily basis and how that can change. So in terms of work-wise, so we kickstart the day, we get everybody involved in a call, and actually we dedicate time just to talk about how is everybody feeling today, checking in, what I know some of the team have started talking about their top TV and box set recommendations, because it just brings everybody in, a bit like we do in the office. Everybody goes to the office and has a little moan or talks about last night's TV shows, and we really see that as really important rather than just getting stuck into work. So that's something else we're doing. In terms of other things throughout the day, it can be difficult to keep tabs on what everybody's doing daily. So we're sort of producing kind of chart to see how busy everybody is, to see those that might be overloaded and others are kind of less so. But also for those to kind of keep the day varied is another crucial, part of all of this. Don't get stuck into mundane tasks that are really going to just, you've got to keep up your motivation, and I think we've got to keep up morale at the same time. So lots of that. Our company have been really, really good actually in terms of, well, first of all, looking at everybody's desk assessments, because that's another really important thing. It's not healthy if you're sort of, on a sofa, or if you're sitting on your bed and, posture and so on, particularly if this is going to go into weeks and months. So, we've been looking at desk assessments. We're sending out weekly newsletters and top tips to the team rather than monthly. We're getting everybody together on coffee mornings, Zoom calls, and wine evenings and things like that. So I think we're doing quite a good job in terms of checking in and just evolving as we go through each week. As I say, we don't know how far this is going to be. So.
Okay, check. Yeah, just making sure I thought I might be on mute again then, but not. No, that's really cool. Laura, I don't know if you've seen the questions. There's a couple of comments coming up there, which would be good, I think, for you, certainly from Alice from Heineken, which is quite interesting there, and a really interesting comment. And thinking about that, Alison, perhaps we can have a chat offline, but it would be really good to bring somebody in who's perhaps ahead of the curve on this, maybe get one of your colleagues from Italy or from Spain or something like that to talk to our group or as a panelist would be really, really interesting. So yeah, Laura, do you want to add some of your holistic fairy dust over all of this, and also respond to a couple of those questions? I get absolutely support. How can we support members in the team who are struggling with lockdown? I think I can definitely see this becoming, cabin fever, and I think I think there's still another stage to go here as well from the government. Maybe when we get to see our peak, as they say, that will that then be total isolation like Spain and Italy are in? You are not allowed out your front door more than 200 meters or whatever.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So just to quickly introduce myself first. So I'm Laura Capalabra. I run a coaching, development and wellbeing company called No More Ifs or Buts, and also one called Stress Matters as well. And I've worked in the events industry for a long time, and 4 years ago set up No More Ifs or Buts to kind of help everyone in the industry, knowing that it's pretty tough. And so over the last few weeks, we've got a lot of coaching clients, whether or not they're kind of apprentices, right the way up to kind of C-suite. And we're definitely seeing obviously changes in the way people are adapting to things, but also that kind of well-being, mental health side, which I think you guys have brought up, which is a really important part. So there's that kind of side of it, which is practically how do you manage it? How do you communicate with your team? How often you speak to them without interfering? How do you keep track on people and their workload? And so there's all this kind of practical side, and yet there's absolutely all of that well-being, mental health side. So just taking a couple of those questions first. So we had a question from Alison about, or a comment really about how, in fact, in Italy, what they found is that for the first couple of weeks, everyone's kind of getting used to it, and then people are seeing a little bit of a dip in morale, and we can absolutely kind of see and understand why that's happening. So if you think about some people obviously are more than a week in, most people are probably 2 weeks in now, but there will be some that were working from home or isolating before that. So, the first week or two, it's a bit like any change. So, change takes a little bit of getting used to, a little bit of navigating through. And there's all those practical things that have to sort out. So Christina, where you were saying actually everyone was quite busy at the beginning in terms of contacting each other, that doesn't surprise me at all, because everyone wants to be there for each other, and you do get into a little bit of a rhythm. So actually what we're probably finding this week for most people is that actually it's not quite as scary as it was last week. So actually they don't need to reach out quite so much, and they're just kind of getting into their groove a little bit. But what I can absolutely anticipate happening, and we've seen it from a few people here who have been in isolation for longer, and it's great to hear regarding the colleagues in Heineken in Italy that a similar thing was happening there. So we can prepare for it, which is actually, you might be getting into the groove of it, you might be getting used to it, but also the fatigue of that is going to set in the next couple of weeks as well. So, you know, we can kind of get around the fact we've got our time outside and we're excited about doing pub quizzes with our colleagues and doing virtual tea breaks and all these lovely things we do to connect with people. But actually there's going to be a point where we suddenly realise that actually we don't have that access to the outdoor space, and we don't have access to people, and we don't have that intimacy or touching other people, even if it's just a hug, for example. So we're going to start to notice those things happening, and I think it's really important for everybody to kind of focus on their kind of self-awareness, and also then your kind of emotional intelligence with your team members as well, because you'll find that a lot of people that are more extroverted are going to really struggle at that kind of 2-week, 3-week in period, because they've kind of gone through adrenaline and they've been excited about speaking to people, but actually when they find they can't take their energy from other people, it's going to become more challenging for them quite quickly. So you might see a sudden dip in their morale, and it's really important we can put things in place for them now that we think that actually will help them. So it's great to kind of understand that these things are going to happen, so that actually we can prepare for it as well. And how we can support people with those that are struggling. There's different areas, and it's very much going to depend on the person. So some people are going to feel probably quite frantic if they've got lots of people they live with, lots of people in their house, a lot of things on their plate. There's going to be a sense of overwhelm. So how can we support them and kind of separate out those sections of their life and their work for them, and help them kind of manage that, and whether or not it's leaving them a couple of hours a day where we don't try and communicate with them so they can have a little bit of a downtime. But we've also got the other side of that, with those people that are struggling, like you were saying, Amy, that actually maybe in isolation, so they really want that constant communication because otherwise they don't have a connection to the outside world. So how we're going to help them is really going to differ on what the situation is for that person. And Christina, you were saying about really getting to know your team members, and I think that's really true. We've seen that a lot, is that actually it's a really quick fire way of suddenly bonding with your team members when you've got kids running into screen and you can see the background of their bedrooms and all of those things. You get to know everyone a bit more. And so actually I think that one of the first things you can do is just keep at that conversation with your team members and find out if they are struggling. Let's hopefully pick that up as a sign, or have that kind of quite open conversation with them about it. And actually ask them, you know, what do you think will help? And sometimes it will be that they know that actually they're missing certain people, or actually they're feeling like they're not getting enough break and not getting enough kind of me time throughout the day. And you might be able to work with some of those in terms of being a solution finder. But actually sometimes people just want us to listen and show empathy to the fact that it's really hard. So one of the most basic things we can do then is just listen to that person and just understand that we don't know what's going on in their world. They can tell us, but we don't understand it quite as much as they do. So we can try and show empathy. And as I said, it's that kind of building emotional intelligence ourselves and helping our team. And then there are loads of practical things you can do as well. So there are various, as you say, EAP programs. We run a support line as well for people in the events industry if people want somebody to talk to. We also run a buddies program where we can buddy people up in a different organisation, so actually they don't feel like they're talking to their colleagues the whole time if they are feeling overwhelmed. But there's some really nice practical things you can do, like sending gifts to the houses of your colleagues as well. So actually, you know, can you send gift vouchers out to everybody? Or can you send a piece of post, like little postcards with little notes on to people in their houses? We do little self-care cards that you can send out to your team members, just as a little way to make them smile throughout the day. And I think we can still have some of those physical contact points and surprise and kind of delight things. We can keep people motivated. We just need to be a little bit more creative than we are normally. But a lot of it's going to be signposting. If it's actually a real kind of a serious overwhelm, signposting them into support services that are available.
Oh, he dropped off. Hello?
Hello.
So I seem to have dropped off then. There I am. Thanks, Laura. That's really, really helpful. There is some information on the EMA website about your buddy scheme. And if anyone wants to talk to Laura, because this part of that sort of how can we support members, if as an organization you don't have a structure in place within that business, like Christina was saying, that you've got an external team from a company or something who can help, or HR who will talk to people confidentially, then exactly that's the sort of stuff that Laura supports many small businesses or medium-sized businesses with, and we can help with that. And the buddy system is really useful. Interesting enough, I was talking to a friend of mine last night who's a chef and has a couple of restaurants, and he's doing all this furloughing and with his stuff and everything else, and then he's got people asking about their holidays. And he's like, because as a business owner, he's pulling his hair out saying, hang on, they're on holiday. I thought, hang on, no, they're not on holiday. Because so, you know, different people look at things and situations differently. And of course, you know, he's now got his team in lockdown for 3 months and everything else, and the holiday system shifts. So there's going to be a lot of that, isn't there? And there's that challenge as being a manager or as being a company, same sort of thing. You're going to have hopefully this load of work to do in the next half of the year, or certainly the final quarter going into next year, and all these things are going to stack up. So managing that communication and engagement with the team and starting to think ahead of the curve to plan these things is quite a challenge. Anybody got any thoughts and views on that? Are you already starting to put things in place?
We've actually already started thinking about this. We're just at year end, so we were normally we would be all taking our leave to make sure we don't lose it, rolling over our 5 days. We have been told that we can roll over more than 5 days if we need to for those. But we've already started to think about, you know, that the latter end of the year is just going to be insane at the moment. You know, all of the events, everything's being pushed to the latter end, you know, the last 6 months or even the last 3 or 4 months. And of course, it's so important that everybody, like you say, continues to take their annual leave. And I think once we come out of this, or we certainly start to come out of it, everyone's going to be needing that annual leave at a time where suddenly work's really busy again. So we have already anticipated that, and we're going to make a real point to make sure that the team manage it and that they do take their leave, and we think that's really, really important. So as well as juggling all of those diaries and all those events, we must make sure the team take their leave. I think that's really important. The other thing I was going to mention is that it's about encouraging everybody to identify anxiety, because not everybody's suffered from anxiety in the past, but I think whether that's mild or more severe, everybody's going to feel some form of anxiety through all of this. And I think it's so important, to identify what that is, early warning signs, and then measures to kind of manage it. You know, and whether that is just literally switching off the video calls, the messages, because I think you were saying, Laura, I think you were saying the first week was just intense, everybody thrown into this crazy way of working. And I actually thought, oh my gosh, I don't know how this is going to continue. I had WhatsApp calls, I had video calls, I had emails, I had phone calls. But it has definitely slowed down into a groove. But I think people need to take it further and maybe go, do you know what? I'm feeling this, it's a bit too much. I'm going to turn it off for an hour or 2 hours or whatever. So yeah, managing anxiety. I'm actually, one thing I keep telling myself to do, I'm going to use one of the apps to do some meditation, because that's going to help. You know, yoga and Pilates helps. So yeah, and I just wanted to touch on the buddying point. We're also introducing buddy systems just within our organisation, not so much within the teams because we're very close and we open up anyway. But I think to buddy up with someone in another team who you don't necessarily know so well, to share things and also to share kind of practices across teams, I think it's really beneficial.
There's a question come up on the board about, you know, how can you monitor productivity within the team without being overbearing and everything else? And I think that's a big challenge. And it also came up something similar in our, so for if there's any heads of departments on the call. At EMA, we've also set up a smaller group, which is just pure, it's heads of department team on a Tuesday morning session. And we're trying to grow that so we can share some best practice across EMA and across the business, different businesses. If you want to join that, then please drop myself or James an email. But also part of that came on, there was a part of the call where people were reticent to share their on-screen pictures, as in, join a conference call and be part of that. They just wanted to do the voice. There was, shifting that. But also when they were and when they were not available. So there's this change, because of course, if you're in the office, you can see your office diary and you are available 9 till 5. Now you have a responsibility to, go shopping at certain times. You need to get food. You need to school your kids. There's certain things you need to do. So you have to adjust your personal working style and manage that into the business. And what I'm trying to sort of say is that agreeing within your teams or agreeing within your organizations that people can put in the diary, the office diary, not available between 2 and 4. And either should they be putting homeschooling or what they're doing, or just say, these are the times that I'm available to join group calls. These are the times that I'm available not to. Have you guys, Christina, Amy, have you seen how you're adapting to that in your organizations, or what directions is the business giving the employees, and how you're adapting that into your teams? That makes sense.
Yeah, for us, there isn't a clear guideline around it. It's more around some of the tips that were shared were definitely to block those timings in your calendar. So when you're homeschooling, or if you're exercising at a particular time during the day, whatever it may be, just block that time in your calendar. We don't currently share our calendars, as in my team cannot see exactly kind of what meetings I'm having and what I'm doing, but maybe if you feel appropriate, that might be something that you might want to do, just in order to build, I suppose, that trust and transparency, if that's something that is currently missing. But within my team, it definitely comes down to just being honest and just sharing like how you're managing your days. And nothing is set in stone. We're still seeing how what works for us and what doesn't. We also have had some talks around maybe changing our working hours, because, and I know that probably doesn't work for everyone, but it is a conversation to be had if you feel that that's the way that you can survive through this. For some people, maybe working early morning and late in the evening is the way to go about it. Maybe it's just for 1 week, for a short period of time, maybe not, but just maybe trialing out different ways to do it. But it's very much about being honest. Even if you want to try something out, like, your team should support you to do that. So that's kind of how we're currently going about it. And actually changing my working hours was something that I had suggested when I was like, I still don't know how this will work with my daughter at home, but maybe it is something to look at. We're a global team. I work a lot with North America. Sometimes, working in the evenings is quite convenient for me. So, maybe not everyone is open to such changes, but you have to do what you have to do to make it work.
Yeah, that's I think a very good point, is because, when we talk about productivity, are businesses still expecting to get, 7+ hours of work out of people every day, or do they realize, or do people, employees, team players accept, well, this has been put on me, I've now got these other responsibilities, they should fall into my work day? I don't know, Laura, if you've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've talked about quite a lot over the last couple of years is this concept of fluid working. So kind of taking the word flexible working that little bit further. And to your point, Christina, actually you know, different people can benefit from working at different times of the day. Now, obviously, there's some organisations that's just physically impossible because of the role that you might be doing. But actually, we've always talked about fluid working, and I think now is a kind of a time when it's, you know, it really could actually start rolling out in certain organisations, because the concept behind it being that actually, if you trust your team to do a good job, you trust your team are bought into the mission of your company and trust into kind of the support that that they're going to offer the team. Actually, if that trust is there and facilities allow them to do it around them, then actually trust them to be adults to manage their time appropriately. So actually, yes, if you need to go and pop to the shops in the middle of the day, or you need to look after your kids for 3 hours because your partner's not available, or just because they need homeschooling at that point in time, actually, I think there needs to be a little bit more trust into the team members that, do you know what, you might end up working at 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at the night, but you might have these massive chunks of the day where you're doing things for yourself, because that's how you need to adapt in this time. And I think the output that comes from that, so the kind of the word around productivity is really important, because, yeah, I think there's a sense of a lot of companies, depending on which way they've fallen. So obviously there's a lot of companies that a lot of individuals don't have a huge amount of work. So that's one challenge. You've obviously got those people that are overloaded and rescheduling and things like that as well. So it does differ kind of between different companies. But the idea around thinking about actually what is achievable in that time. So there's productivity and there's what's actually possible to do. Because, yeah, we might have been working, you know, 8, 9, 10 hours a day previously. But actually, if the work isn't there for us to do that, and we can do that in 5 hours, then why are we kind of pushing to work those extra couple of hours? Because the business environment doesn't allow us to either. But also there's obviously that personal thing of, if you can't do that, then what the expectations are from the company. And I think it's going to vary in terms of your relationship and the culture at that company. So if the culture at the organisation is quite inclusive and quite understanding and supportive, then there's probably going to be an expectation that, do you know what, productivity is going to drop on certain days, because that's just going to be what happens. But hopefully overall and over a kind of longer time period, everything will balance itself out, because people will work out how to be more effective. And there's been so many studies to prove that actually people from working from home are more productive anyway. So even if you're working less hours, the company might actually find, and you might personally find, that you are being more productive during the day anyway, because as long as you are kind of not answering every single call and blocking off some Zoom calls, for example, actually you might have a little bit more focus time than what you do. So you might find you work less hours, but actually your productivity goes up in that time. So it balances out a little bit.
Okay, cool. We talked earlier at the beginning of the day about routines, and, you know, creating your sort of a daily itinerary, and sort of, you know, even I've heard people say, right, I'm going to the office, prepare yourself. I saw a little funny video online the other day about 3 guys getting in and out of the shower, pretending that they were on, you know, they were a flat share, I think, and they were using the shower as their commute to work. But I think that, you know, again, how people are adapting to that and sort of setting a routine. Part of me, and we touched on that earlier, about a bit about sort of the cabin fever thing. If you set one of the things I learned, if you set your routine too rigidly, then that also creates a feeling of, I don't know, here we go again. It's the same old thing. 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm out for my walk and my run. You know, trying to be too rigid with things, or maybe moving things around. I don't know if people think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as human beings, we all tend to gravitate to routine, and some more than others. I mean, I know that I operate best when I'm in routine. But I think, like I said at the beginning, the key thing with that is a healthy routine and healthy habits. It's so easy to fall into bad habits. So, yeah, I think routine and varied, and keeping your tasks varied, so that, you know, you keep engaged. And going back to the flexible working, and even within our small organisation, we've got those that are currently overworked because we're working on policy, or working on changing events, and those that really aren't very engaged. So I think it's so important that we look at a balance. And one thing that we're looking to do is probably expand job remits during this time. So we're not just doing necessarily our jobs, and we might be, for example, one member of the team is now taken on to some of the research webinars. It's not necessarily his job remit, but and also a bit more cross-team working to help out those teams that are overloaded and those that less so. So I think that's really important. And actually, long term, I think it's a really good way of getting to know the organisation better and what everybody does. And I also think, Laura was saying, I think some of this flexible working will actually be permanent in the end. I think we're all demonstrating to our businesses that we can work flexibly and that in many cases it's more productive. So I actually think a lot of this is going to become long term, and we're going to see a lot more working from home and maybe hot desking and so on in the offices. So I think there's a lot of positive things that will come out of this bad time as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that entirely. I think there's been a lot of resistance to flexible working, home working, because there has been a view of, I want to see what people are doing. It's that sort of hierarchical management process system that if you're not in sight, I don't know what you're doing, and I can't see what's happening. So there's that. It's a kind of fear and control. Whereas if we can monitor people's productivity and trust them to do what they do and report, so I've been part of, with clients on big global events, being part of reporting structure there, and I had to send a weekly report to my client boss, which was, okay, what are the key initiatives that you're working on? What have you done? What have you achieved? And that was a cascade process. I'm going back 20 years now, but I thought it was really interesting. That was sort of MasterCard. But how they then, she then took hers and cascaded that up. So it kept everyone aware through the management chain of these are the big things that are on the agenda, and these are things that are being done, even in a dispersed workforce. I think that was cool. I'm going to start to wrap this up because I sort of try to keep it to 45 minutes. So I'm going to say, if there's any other questions from people that are listening online, please quickly throw them into the question box, and I can sort of start to wrap up some of what I'm seeing as the learning that we're getting here. One of the things I wanted to throw out there, I don't know if people are aware of it, I think Gartner may certainly be aware, but there's a Strength Finders, I think is a really good tool or platform to develop learning and understanding of your personal strengths and your colleagues' strengths. There's a number of books out there on it. There's an online process of, it's a bit like Belbin and stuff like that. But it's really good that there are, I think, 5 or 7 strengths, and understanding those as a team and how you can interact and everything. So, I very much see myself as, or I know my strengths are, I'm creative. I'm a lateral thinker. I visualize everything. As you can see, I'm shit at admin. When I used to have people, it was great, but everything kind of piles up. But I'll get to that later.
That's where Abby gets it from.
She tells me she's good at admin. But yeah, I'm very untidy, but it's organized chaos in my head. I know where everything is. I know what I need to be doing. Everything else. But I knew that my colleague Mark, who I used to work with, it drove him absolutely scatty because his email box would only have he wouldn't let it drop off the bottom of the screen. So he'd only have like 12 emails or actions. And, I look at my email box, I've got 10,500 emails in my email box. I've cleared my email box out. So I think that, understanding those different semantics of team players and each other, and also for them to understand that. So I think that's part of what we do, look at upskilling and learning and development, the stuff that you can be doing together as a team to understand some of these things better about each other and everything else. I don't think thoughts on that.
From my side, it's absolutely one of the things we're talking to our clients about. I mean, obviously, we naturally do a lot of those things. So business-wise, we're trying to encourage people to do that as well. But it is a really good opportunity to do a bit of a reset, whether or not that's on a personal kind of self-reflection piece to, as you say, look at things like strengths finding. There's another great one called 16 Personalities, which is a really good one to check out as well. It goes a little bit more in depth than some of the strengths finders, but actually gives you a really good personal overview of people as well. So we're putting together we have put together a program that's a 3-month online learning and development program, because actually, exactly as you said, Richard, there's this opportunity to improve awareness, improve skills in this time. And actually, to your point, Amy, I think things are going to change going forward. And actually, I think the way we work and the way we see ourselves and our relationships with the people, I think, is going to change for the better by far. So the more we can use this as an opportunity to reset and to actually develop ourselves and those relationships, I think the better. From my side, the coach side, it's the perfect time to do it. It's like, come on, guys, like, you're all at home, you've got, some time, not all the time, you've got some time to actually reflect. And I think some of the things where we're kind of getting anxieties and some of the things where we're struggling with, it's actually a really good indication of what's important to us. So for those people that kind of say, flippantly, oh, family's important, whatever's important, but you don't really understand what's important to you, even being able to spend that time doing some kind of self-reflection of what your values are, it's a really good time to be doing this, because actually you've got a really kind of good overview of when things are in your day-to-day life. Are you happy or not? Because there's limited things coming in and out, so it's quite easy to control and to kind of assess that situation as well.
And something to add, I think if you see that someone is not productive, it's just really trying to understand what will stimulate them to be more productive. So it could be, and that can be benefiting your business as well. So what we've started working on, because we know there are members of our teams who it might be a quiet time for them work-wise. We're not trying to obviously give them more work for the sake of giving them more work, but we've started working on side projects, which we haven't had time to do before. So can be little things. I think we've mentioned a couple before around, at the moment, a big project we are working on is accessibility, networking. So we are very much, not having live events at the moment, but once we come back to it, networking is at the core of what we do, peer interaction. So finding ways, technology to support us with that. So setting up some little projects where, if you've assessed where, what the skill set of each individual is and where they can contribute, getting them to work on these smaller projects can be really beneficial to your business, but also to them, to kind of keep them going, especially if it's something that interests them. Just try to understand what is it that motivates them work-wise. And if the situation is really bad and someone is, really low, then you have to have the conversations around what then, inspires them individually. Try to support them as much as you can with that. For me personally, I find that now I have a little bit more time, or maybe there is less distraction as opposed to being in the office, but I can actually put my headphones and listen to podcasts. I've signed up to this masterclass. It's a platform where you have like bite-sized courses from people, very successful people. So it could be in filming, it could be in cooking, various things, but like you listen to it. That for me, that is like, it really helps me to focus. And it's something additional that I learn that's on a kind of personal level. But there are, as I mentioned, there are other bits and pieces that we do that are very stimulating, I think. Seems to be working.
Okay. So guys, I'm going to wrap it up. We can carry on talking for hours, I'm sure. I know we've all got jobs to go to. Anyone online, anybody have ideas or thoughts of bits of content that they want to see us discussing? Please let us know. James, everyone's got his email address. We'll sort of evolve these panels as we go along. And yeah.